everyone, my name is Nanashi, and welcome to a little game I like to call Fate Prism. This game is a passion project I've been working on for a long time now, and is a unification between the rules-minimal, free-ish storytelling focus of Fate Core, and the combat, hit point, and magical stylings of Dungeons & Dragons, as well as a few aspects I've thrown in myself for style. Now, I won't explain everything about what makes Dungeons & Dragons and Fate Core so special, because I can't do either justice and there are plenty of tubers that can do it better than I. However, I can explain my combat system that fuels several of the interactions in the game. And before I start, I will give a very large warning that there will be exceptions, but these are the general rules. To start, there are 19 total skills in the Fate Core system, which is what I use as a basis for how I play it. And I use a much smaller structure than most Fate games, starting each character at level 1 with 1+3 skill, 2+2 skills, and 3+1 skills. I also recommend each player pick 3 combat skills, 2 utility skills, and 1 social skill as a basis to round out the character. Last thing we want is a horde of antisocial murder hobos that can't change a light bulb. But when it comes to combat specifically, you only need to focus on these 8. Fight is for short-range melee weapons. Your swords, axes, hammers, spears, what have you. Anything that doesn't consume a resource and hits within the 10-foot zone you're in. Shoot is for long-range weapons. Your guns and bows mostly, and yes, there is ammo consumption into this system, but shoot weapons can hit anyone regardless of range. Academics is for your spell casting. Every plus gives you a higher tier of spells, and every spell is fueled by paying mana, formerly called lore, similar to how ammo is for shoot weapons. Athletics is your dodge skill, pure and simple. Stealth is a flex skill that can be used in place of fight, shoot, and athletics, but you can only use it with a single weapon that is one-handed or can flexibly be used with 2, because being stealthy with a warhammer is funny but nonsensical. Physique determines how many hit points you have. Each adult character starts with 10 hit points, you gain 5 more with every plus to physique, and while at 0 hit points, you are down and cannot use any action. Taking more damage than your remaining health is irrelevant, the attack that puts you at 0 puts you to 0. And if you are hit while your hit points are at 0, you are dead. No save roll. Now, Fate Core has a more unique health system that has 2 health bars, one for physical damage and one for mental damage. It determines damage based on the difference in rolls, and it racks up injuries to worsening degrees in the form of character aspects. But it didn't really work for my game, mainly because mine has healing magic, which kinda invalidates these aspects to a degree, so I went with a simplistic variant of a D&D hit point system instead, while keeping those injury aspects in mind during instances where damage is not fully healed. Drive helps to determine how much you can move per turn in the battle zone, and has some other secondary combat economy options, which we will get to in a bit. Now, the battle zone itself is a 4x4 grid of zones, each one being a 10-foot by 10-foot square, and each can hold 4 people and/or things, 2x2 style. The placement in the square is irrelevant. This is not D&D's precise placement system, you are just in that square. I refer to my combat system as the AIM system, which stands for Attack, Item, and Movement. This is the 3 things each character can do on their respective turns, but they are only allowed to do 2 of them, because realistically, anything more would require too much time. Now, you can do these 2 things in whatever order you like, and if you have a lot of movement, you can split your movement before and after your other actions. First is Attack. You select a person you want to strike down, you select your weapon or spell of choice, and you roll with the skill it falls under. Now, each weapon, item, and spell has a preset damage value, so all you need to do is find out if your attempt was successful. You roll your 4 fudge dice, add the skill's plus value to the result, and that's your attempt. Your opponent will try to defend themselves with their own roll, usually powered by an athletics or stealth roll of their own. If your attack roll is higher than the opponent's dodge roll, you hit and deal that weapon's full damage. If you both roll the same, it's a match, and if you roll lower, it's a miss. If you match or miss, you don't deal damage. With one exception, which I'll get to in a bit. Next comes item actions, and there are 3 kinds. You can consume an item to gain its benefits, throw an item like a weapon, or apply an item based on how it works. Movement is simply how much you can move during your turn. One instance of movement can be used to move 1 square in any direction, including diagonal. Now, during your opponent's turn, you can attempt to dodge any incoming attack or item action against you by performing an athletics or stealth roll, or by using your once per round reaction. Reaction use is dependent on outside factors like equipment or stunts and things like that, so don't focus on it too much, just understand it is a once per round option that will likely come up. The weapon system specifically was something I took a great deal to fashion, and while it's far from perfect, I have crafted a general guideline that can be applied to most weapons. Empty-handed weapons like gauntlets still leave your hands free to do other things, but some have a value on them like +1 DMG, which adds a point of damage to your attacks on a hit depending on the item. Dual-wield weapons, also known as one-handed weapons, like fists and pistols, let you carry one in one hand and something else in another. If you dual-wield two weapons, you can roll to attack with each one on a single attack action, but there are some stipulations. Now, if your first roll is a hit, the second is made a disadvantage, as though the first hit slowed your momentum for the second. If your first roll is a match, the second one is normal. And if your first roll is a miss, the second is made an advantage, as though you added the momentum from the first into your next attempt. Two-handed weapons like polearms or rifles demand both hands to use and usually do more damage than the smaller one-handed weapons, but have fewer chances to hit. Now, heft weapons like claymores and large crossbows are bigger, heavier, and more demanding versions of two-handed weapons that can never be dual-wielded, even with a stunt. This is a balance feature, I assure you. On top of that, if your physique is not at least at a +3, any attempts to use it are automatically made at disadvantage. This is another balance feature, I assure you. Talking specifically about fight weapons for a moment, these are normally designed to hit a target in the same zone as you, as opposed to shoot weapons being able to hit anyone in any zone. But that doesn't mean fight weapons don't have some cool tricks to make up for this shortcoming. Disarm weapons like nunchucks or whips can either be rolled with fight to do damage on a hit, or rolled with burglary to take one weapon or item the opponent is holding out of their hands on a hit. If you do steal something with this, you can either throw it away to another adjacent zone, or add it to your own inventory. Flexible weapons like swords and bardishes can either be used one-handed and are treated as dual-wield weapons, or you can wield one in both hands as a two-handed weapon and add 1 damage to its value on a hit. Guard weapons like tonfa can beef up your defense by trading your once per round reaction for a +1 to your dodge roll using athletics or stealth. Best of all, if you have multiple items with this property, each one adds +1 to this dodge boost. Reach weapons like polearms are able to hit people in your zone or the next adjacent zone over. Throwable weapons and items like knives can be thrown one zone away and can use a fight, shoot, or stealth roll. This of course takes it out of your inventory, but you can pick it back up for free by just entering the zone. Now, drifting back to shoot weapons, the plus in them is that they can hit from anywhere, but the minus is they require ammo consumption, and some can only be used so many times before they need to be reloaded. Now, soft reload weapons like bows usually consume 1 ammo per shot, but reloading it is just part of the attacking action and doesn't require anything more. It's just all in the follow-through. Reload weapons like pistols and rifles have a maximum number of shots it can hold, but when that number is exhausted, you must sacrifice 1 point of movement to reload it with ammo of any amount, up to the reload value. This is another reason movement matters as an action economy. Hard reload weapons like heavy crossbows have a max number of shots it can hold, but when that number is exhausted, you must use your entire movement action, regardless of how much movement you actually have available, to reload it with ammo of any amount, up to its reload value. Now, some weapons can use different types of ammo, but basic ammo is the most common and just deals the weapon's damage to one target. Pierce ammo can deal the weapon's damage across multiple targets, specifically 1 additional target per zone up to its pierce rating. So a pierce round can hit 2, while a pierce 2 round hits 3, and so on and so forth. But there are some stipulations. Every hit with it reduces the pierce rating by 1, unless they're wearing armor, in which case it is reduced by 2 and destroys that armor. If the pierce rating hits 0 though, then that target is the last target. Now, explosive ammo deals the weapon's damage to anyone in a zone without targeting, sometimes multiple zones in a line or a grid, but not diagonally. Spread ammo also deals the weapon's damage to anyone in a zone without targeting, sometimes multiple zones in a line or grid, including diagonally. And in case you're wondering, yes, I have included a rule set for auto-fire weapons as well. Any weapon that fires multiple shots at a time, like machine guns or weapons that you can fan the hammer, has a set number of shots they can release as 1 attack action each turn, but there is a simple stipulation. 1 roll covers the entirety of its multiple shots, and you only need to roll 1 dodge roll against it, but for each additional shot it fires, it adds a -1 to the following shot. So the first shoot roll is a normal roll, but the second will be that roll -1, then the third will be that roll -2, and so on until the limit is reached. Now, Fate Core has a magic system that uses a similar permission, heritage, patron, training, and disciples option as D&D, as well as enchanted items, potions, and element-based disciplines. But the spells themselves can be left up to interpretation based on the situation, and their cost system was a bit too expensive mechanically for me and my story. Now, D&D's magic system had all those things I was missing, but it also had hundreds of spells in the main books alone, and each one does damage and effects in so many different ways, it made it difficult to display everything a player could do in one simple, straightforward list. Not to mention, I'm not a huge fan of spell slots, too confining and limiting for my taste. So I took both branches of this problem and created a simple, straightforward magic system-based structure with varying levels of spell cost, physical range, and flavor of effects, and there is a natural inclining access rate to getting stronger spells. Best of all, there are less than 100 spells to pick from, and they are not hard to memorize. Now to start casting spells, you need two skills specifically, Academics and Mana. Academics, normally your basic intelligence and book smart skill, doubles as your casting skill, and increasing it will increase the knowledge you have of what spells you can use and how powerful they are. Mana is your knowledge of the arcane and magical part of the world, and represents how much of your magical potential you can utilize. You start with 0, but your character gains 10 mana points per plus in mana. Now there are a grand total of 13 different colors of magic and 7 different tiers of spell. The spell structure works like this. If you have a +1 in Academics, you automatically have all 12 level 0 spells as a ground layer and sample platter of what the magic types can do, and a single level 1 spell. And every plus up from there gives you 1 spell of that level and 1 additional spell of every level below it, barring 0, in a pyramid structure, all the way to level 5. Now the last tier spell, Calamity, follows the same rule, but there are some extra stipulations, and I'll get to that in a bit. Your Academics is also used for your rolls, and each spell of each level costs a set amount of mana to cast it. Just like weapons, on a hit you do the damage, and on a miss or match, you don't. But there is a small difference. On a hit or match, you also get to apply a small bonus referred to as a status effect, sort of like a residual splash of magic that flavors the spell. A level 0 spell, essentially your cantrip tier magic, costs 1 mana point to cast, targets 1 person in your zone, and deals 1 damage plus status on a hit or just status on a match. However, because they are such weak spells, you can utilize them in another way. At the start of any attack action using a weapon, you can pay 1 mana point to cast that level 0 spell on top of that weapon, no roll required. Then make your attack action using that weapon and your actual combat skill. Now the duration is for the entire turn, but on a hit or match with a quote-unquote infused weapon, that spell's 1 damage plus status is dealt to the opponent, treating the entire spell like a status effect. Now moving up from there, you have your level 1 spells, which cost 2 mana to cast, strikes all characters and objects in your zone or an adjacent zone, except the caster, and deals 1 damage plus status on a hit or just status on a match. This spell does not target any character or object and is instead considered an area of effect. Next up, you have your level 2 spells, which cost 4 mana to cast, strikes all characters and objects in any 4 zones in a line of your choosing, including diagonally, except the caster, and deals 2 damage plus status on a hit or just status on a match. These spells also do not target any character or object and is instead considered an area of effect. Then you have your level 3 spells, which cost 6 mana to cast, strikes all characters and objects in any 3x3 grid of zones of your choosing, and deals 3 damage plus status on a hit or just status on a match. Now these spells are also considered an area of effect and will not hit the caster, but you also have the option to target only all allies or target only all enemies for no extra cost. Now these are the spells everyone has access to from the start of the game, since they can start with 1 skill on their character as high as +3. However, you might notice a trend of these spells being all AoE style, but I can hear you thinking, given that dedicated spell slingers are good at small damage in large areas, what do they do if they need to do large damage in small areas? Well, they could pick up a weapon and become fluent in might and magic, or they could use the level 4 spells, the summons. These spells cost 8 mana to cast, creates an animalistic creature made of semi-solid magic of that spell's color to any open zone on the board, and does not require a roll to cast. Each of these creatures have 10 hit points, use your skills for any relevant rolls, which means no separate character sheet needed, take their turn immediately after yours, and are resistant to all magic of the same type or color as it, while having a weakness to its elemental opposite. Now, it can't use any weapons, but it does have a magic melee hybrid attack that targets one character in the same zone as it, uses the caster's academic skill for the roll, and deals 4 damage plus status on a hit or just 1 damage and status on a match. And yes, that means it exists in a perpetual state of infusion. Now, what could possibly be better than that at 5th level? How about an even bigger and more powerful spell called an Idle Summon? These spells cost 10 mana to cast, create a semi-solid magical entity of that spell's color to any open zone, and does not require a roll to cast. However, there is a hard limit of only 1 per player at a time, regardless of color, and that is for good reason. These creatures have 15 hit points, also use your skills for any relevant rolls, also take their turn immediately after yours, and are immune to all magic of the same type or color as it, while having a weakness to its elemental opposite. It has 2 options for attacks. First is a magic melee hybrid attack that targets one character in the same zone as it, uses the caster's academic skill for the roll, and deals 5 damage plus status on a hit, or just 1 damage plus status on a match. And yes, it also exists in a perpetual state of infusion. Or, it also has the option to cast spells, specifically the level 1, level 2, and level 3 spells of its own color once each, and no, you don't need to know the spells, it knows them for you. The casts are completely free, do the same damage and status as a normal spell cast, and uses your academics to determine the roll. Now the only spell type left is the max level spells called Calamity spells. These are your win buttons. These are your problem solvers. These are the spells designed to end fights you don't want to take part in. And as such, you only get one, and you can only cast it once per in-game day. First, in order to even get one, you need to have +5 academics and +5 mana. And their cost is every point of mana you have, but you must have a minimum of 10. Each spell does something a little different, but the trending effect is your roll determines if all your enemies are struck by 1 damage for every 2 mana you just spent, plus status, plus some other crippling bonus on a hit, or half that damage plus the status on a match or miss. That's right, these spells are so massive, they still hit on a miss. And even though it only affects enemies, it does not target. Now, this whole spell structure isn't super difficult or anything, and most elements of magic have 1 spell of each level. But there are 13 different colored elements of magic, and each color and element carries a different thematically appropriate status effect. Red fire magic carries Afterburn, which means you will take 1 damage at the end of your turn per instance unless you spend 1 movement to put it out first. Orange time magic carries Desync, which means your next attack or item action that requires a roll has disadvantage. Yellow light magic carries Radiant, which means the next attack or item action that requires a roll against you has advantage. Green wind magic carries Liftoff, which means you are pushed 1 zone away from the attacker. Or, if you are in a zone with 1 other person or object, you might be shoved into it and take 1 damage instead. Blue water magic carries Riptide, which means you are pulled 1 zone closer to the attacker. Or, if you are in a zone with 1 other person or object, you might be pulled into it and take 1 damage instead. Violet life magic carries Vital, which has 2 effects. If used on an ally, it instead heals them for the damage they would have taken +1. But if on an enemy, it deals normal damage and heals the caster 1 hit point per hit or match. Pink space magic carries Starstruck, which has 2 effects. All your attacks and item actions that require a roll must target or involve the caster, and you cannot use any reaction-based effects. White ice magic carries Frozen, which means you cannot throw or change out any weapons or items you are currently holding. Silver lightning magic carries Conduit, which deals 1 damage per instance the next time you are hit by any weapon or item action that requires a roll and does not have Conduit. Great death magic carries Dread, which means you cannot target the caster with any attack or item action. Black darkness magic carries Hollow, which means your next dodge attempt that requires an athletics or stealth roll has disadvantage. Brown earth magic carries Heavy, which means you lose 1 point of movement during your turn. And gold anti-magic carries Anti-Magic, which isn't so much a status effect as it is a unique casting property. You can still cast it normally, but it also allows you to use your once per round reaction to cast it as a kind of counter spell, nullifying any level 1, level 2, or level 3 spell except for other gold spells. Which means no, you cannot counterspell a counterspell with a counterspell. There are other special mechanics I have pre-planned for the players to discover, and a character's stunts can change everything this list does, theoretically, so don't think of these as inflexible gospel, but more so as a groundwork guideline. I thank you for watching this basic combat tutorial, and if you have any questions or ideas for the system, feel free to say so below. In the meantime, this is Nanashi, and I'll see you on the battlefield.